Well, hello there. It's Morgan here, and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is about that place where we may at times find ourselves where we are struggling to communicate our emotions and we're having a hard time really putting it into words. So, here's something that I've observed and learned from sheet music that I wanted to share with you. So, as someone with a musical background and a visual art background, one thing I've observed is the ways in which my paintings tend to feel very musical to me. For instance, a key of D just feels very blue to me, and a key of G feels very green to me, and so on. There's so many other versions of this that I could give. And for a long time as a kid, I really struggled when it came to music, specifically when it came to learning sheet music. When I was learning piano, I just couldn't figure it out. And despite numerous attempts to learn the Western classical music notation system, I didn't really do very well with sheet music, and I didn't return to music until years later. And eventually, I was able to fill in some of my music theory gaps in college that would end up helping me and assisting me when I actually became a professional musician. However, I still really struggled with understanding sheet music. However, one day when I was just randomly looking up things online, I ended up researching the history of notation and visualizing music and different approaches from around the world. And this caused me to think more deeply about the ways that I had been visualizing music through my art. Because in researching these things, it became clear to me that the kind of sheet music that I was familiar with was just one way of notating and visualizing music. So now, when I look at a piece of sheet music, the kind that I grew up seeing and that I'm familiar with, I may not know how to read it, but when I put it next to my work, my own art, even just aesthetically, I'm becoming increasingly even more inclined to see the art piece as a form of non-linear sheet music of the heart, because these little dots of color are so much more than just color. They communicate emotion and story and foster connection. So when it comes to this idea of figuring out ways to communicate what we are feeling and to communicate something that's going on the inside, perhaps the reason why we get stuck with trying to find the right words is because maybe it's not always words. Maybe sometimes a color just really communicates what we are feeling. Maybe sometimes the song that we're listening to or that we're sharing with other people or that we're singing or that we're writing, it's not just like a fun artsy thing that we're just trying to add on. Maybe that song and that non-linear way of the way the music is just arranged in this spatial kind of experience, maybe that is just an actual way of sharing our experiences and creating connection with others. I think at times it can be very easy to look at something like music or art as something that is just over there while we figure out the real things in life. However, at the same time, we live in a world where people will say things like, oh, that's my song. Or we use a word like love to, oh, I love that style of art. And people feel very connected to certain styles of art and music and dance in a way that just makes some people want to pursue it with their whole life, or they just really enjoy it. Some people will drive hours and hours and hours to go to a concert. Some people will stand in line to see a movie. There are all these different factors, of course, that why someone may want to do that. But at the core, maybe the reason why we listen to some songs on repeat over and over and over again, and why we're just gravitating towards certain colors. Some people just really love blue, some really love purple, and they seek it out in what they wear, in a journal that they might buy, or what color they paint their wall. They're like, I need this color, I need more of this color. Where can I find this? Maybe there's something more to that. Maybe that's not just aesthetic aesthetic, artsy stuff that's just happening on the side. Maybe those things are places that we can look to see the other ways that we've been communicating and expressing what we're feeling. So maybe that's why when we sit down and someone's like, oh, how are you feeling? We're like, I don't know. Maybe it's not about words all the time. Maybe there's something more. So going back to music, music is something that is defined differently in different parts of the world at different points in history. And I just can't help but to be curious about what other types of music and what other types of sheet music in terms of the visualization and the notation of music might be out there waiting for us to discover. What other music might emerge from looking at things and seeing what they communicate about how we feel or our experiences or our story. So I share all of this in hopes to connect with anybody who does find themselves getting stuck at times, whether it's in an artistic sense or it's just in a life sense of conversation. Maybe you're just trying to have a certain kind of conversation with someone and you're just like, I can't get there with them. Like, I just feel like we keep getting stuck in the same spot. I'm not saying that making an abstract art painting together is going to help you solve all of that. But I do think it's worth it to consider that maybe it's not just a coincidence that you are drawn to certain colors or sounds or kinds of music or certain kinds of instruments or certain kinds of tonalities. Like maybe there's a reason and you don't even have to have words for the reason. That's the thing. You don't have to turn it into a paragraph. You don't have to make it a journal entry. You don't have to make it something of like, okay, well, this song has meaning to me. So here is 400 words that I wrote about it. You absolutely can't do that. I do stuff like that all the time, but you don't have to do that. You can just allow yourself to say, maybe this song, the reason why I'm feeling it is because it's communicating something that I have a very hard time putting in words. And that can be frustrating in a sense because we do live in a world where, words, they're a thing. And using them as a part of language and all of that, yes, that's a thing. But then hopefully just in practicing of observing music, abstract art, all these things that don't fit onto a spreadsheet or into a paragraph, maybe in just observing those things, we can start to just create more space to say, this speaks to how I feel. And that's it. I don't have any other words right now. This is all I got. And I'm learning to let that be okay. So that's a journey that I've been on. And looking at sheet music has inspired me in that way. It has inspired me to consider other possibilities. So yeah, I'm not at all arguing that we shouldn't have sheet music. I don't understand it. I wish I did. I really admire people who are able to look at a sheet of music and can just sing it. I think that is like the coolest thing. If that's something you can do, I could watch that forever. I think that's so fascinating. And at the same time, even though I cannot read sheet music myself, I am inspired by those who do as a way of seeing how I might be able to create my own kind of sheet music in my life. Sometimes that may take on the form of just scribbling dots on a page. Maybe sometimes when we go to journal something, we just don't have words and we just let ourselves scribble on the page. Or maybe it's just a moment where we don't even feel like singing a song, like a technical song, and we just allow ourselves to hum a tune. So while we have words for particular feelings and all of that and ways of talking about them, what I hope to leave you with in all of this is an invitation to just explore other ways of communicating, sharing, expressing. And if you don't land on words every time, that's okay. It is absolutely okay if you don't have words all the time. What matters is that you continue to explore how to speak about things that are meaningful to you, and being present to that matters in a big way. So one thing I want to leave you with is this. Think about the way that you communicate with others. And do you think it could be possible that art or music or something that might be considered non-traditional might serve as a way for you to communicate or connect in a meaningful way. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Morgan Harper Nichols.